Good afternoon and welcome to a webinar from Linköping University. This webinar is for students who have just been admitted to our Experimental and Medical Biosciences Master's Program. So congratulations to those of you who've been admitted. I'm here with a student, and Geordie, who's the Program Director. Yep. I will let you introduce yourselves. Your name's Eva, by the way. I was just kind of a student. I'll introduce yourselves in a minute, but just a few kind of general housekeeping things that if you've watched any of these webinars before, you know the drill. Ask questions. Put the questions in the Q&A section, not in the chat. The answers we'll give you the answers at the end. So we'll have a conversation for about half an hour, and then we'll open up for questions. The webinar is also being recorded, so you can find it on our YouTube channel. The aim of this webinar is to talk about the academic side of studying this program. We also have a webinar on Monday the 11th, which will cover more general, practical side of moving here and living here. So this is to kind of get you more prepared for the academic side and what challenges and what have you learned and so on. We won't be able to answer any individual questions about admission or anything to do with admission, really, your application. So, without further ado,
Well, hello then. My name is Eva Danielson, and I'm a student in the Experimental and Medical Bioscience program here at Linköping University. I'm a second year, so hopefully I'll be graduating soon.
Not long to go. And you?
Hi everyone, my name is Jordi Altimiras. I am a professor of physiology at the university, and I'm also the course director for this program. I am the one that is going to be receiving you when you arrive to Linköping in August.
Thank you. Let's start with you. A bit like, why did you choose LiU, and why did you end up here?
I ended up here because I found out that I could go to grad school for free in Sweden because of my father. So I have Swedish citizenship. And then it just became a matter of where. And Linköping University's program is in English, which if you're coming from outside of Sweden is a huge advantage, because a lot of times, even if it's a good idea to learn Swedish, that does not mean you can take biochem in Swedish. Those are two separate things. So just the program flexibility here was just very appealing. The fact that the entire thing was in English and there were resources here for me as someone coming from outside of Sweden. So that's why I sort of settled in this perfect little paradise we call LiU.
Yeah, that's a nice way of describing it. So what is it like? Has it been the paradise you expected?
I started in the middle of a pandemic, so no.
No. Oh.
It was a bit of a transition. I got my acceptance letter February 2020, and we weren't sure if it was going to happen at all or not. So it was definitely an adjustment. There's an adjustment socially, culturally. The entire academic system is very different from America, which, if you can't tell from the accent, is where I'm from. But it was a bit of an adjustment, but now that things have sort of settled and things for the most part have opened up, it is very nice to be able to use the facilities to their fullest and to be able to interact with researchers in various fields and just have access to everything that LiU has to offer that in our first year wasn't necessarily the case.
Yeah. What facilities, when you talk about facilities, Georgie, what facilities do we offer the students?
Well, I think that this is clearly a research-driven program. And in that sense, when the students do their research projects, they are hand in hand. They are basically working with research and the research programs, the research groups at the university. That means that basically any research facility is not off bounds for a master's student if that's the research group that you are going to be working with. So those are our research facilities will be open for students working with the projects, plus the basic teaching facilities, which are also state of the art, but I mean for the purpose of teaching in particular. Yeah.
So your students, you do get you probably you get to do the research yourself, yes. The experiments, rather than some countries you have students they kind of watch.
Yeah, that is not the case here. You show up into the lab, here's a protocol, you talk with your supervisor about what your project's gonna be and what you're gonna do it, and they'll walk you through the protocol, typically once or twice, either them or someone else in the lab, and then it's pretty much all you. It is you running the experiments, it is you trying to figure out how to analyze your data, it is you deciding what parameters are important for you to explore in your work, and it's that sort of in practice thinking and troubleshooting when experiments don't work out the way that your hypothesis said they were supposed to, that really helps to sort of, with that scientific thinking process.
May I add something here? Because, I mean, last year we did we did the program evaluation, we evaluated the entire program, and one of the factors that we looked into was actually scientific production. That means that research papers that actually have their origin in one way or another from master's thesis. So our conclusion is that 1 out of 3 students basically will get a scientific publication in a peer-reviewed journal basically as a result of the master's thesis. That does not mean that the article is about the master's thesis, but that the work done in the master's thesis actually has an impact that will be seen in research publications. And we think that 1 out of 3 is not a bad statistic.
Yeah, I'm one of those actually.
Congratulations.
Yeah, our in vitro experiments, which is what I'm going to be doing my master's thesis on, is now being built into in vivo data that we're collecting from patients, and that's going forward with publication. So I'm now, even as a student, already collaborating with the PhD students who are going to be working together with me to bring this to a paper, hopefully sometime next year. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, that's really exciting. I mean, it's not, so you really do get a feel for the whole kind of subject area, what it's like, and if this is something if you want to continue down the research path. What else is like? So looking at, you're obviously in the lab. What about lectures and seminars and lab time? I mean, what's the balance like?
It depends on the course that you're taking. A lot of the courses are very seminar or interactive work heavy, and the lab component is a smaller part. In something like animal science, that is less so because it is more about learning to handle the animals and work in that capacity. But it is an interesting dynamic because one thing in Sweden is there's a lot more group work and interaction on that level than I'm used to in an American system. In an American system, you show up, you sit there for 2 hours, and you hope that you understood what they said. But there's a lot more give and take, even in the lectures and seminars, that makes it more interactive, which has been very helpful as things switched to Zoom and are now switching back, because it keeps you keyed in on what's actually happening and make sure that you understand as you're going along.
So you have to perform in a way.
Yes.
In a way, you can't just do the 2 hours and I'm a bit tired today. You're expected to deliver.
Well, you can, but then you're not going to pass the class.
No, but it's also going to be noticed.
Yeah, they're going to notice when it's like, so what do you think about this in vitro experiment? And then it's like, hello, hello, Bueller. Nope.
No. Yeah. So you do this kind of, you talk about group work as well. Is that something were you used to that from before? No.
Not at all. Not at all. The US system is completely different in that regard. So in Sweden, you guys have these things called PBLs, which is problem-based learning, and I'm explaining it to the 2 people who teach it. But essentially what happens is you have a lot of outside of lecture and outside of seminar scenarios and situations and subjects that you can explore on your own. And it's really nice because it allows you a way to delve into new material in a very similar way to if you get a new piece of equipment in the lab, or if you start looking at, for example, a tangential subject to your research that you can start exploring. And it lets you dig into those more hands-on rather than sitting there and having it sort of presented to you. So you can explore where your curiosity takes you, but that is in a group setting. So then you'll come together at the end and present, what did you find out about this, or what did you? So for example, we'll look at an immune system or like the complement system in immunology, and we're sort of puzzling together what is in fact a very complicated immunological process, and piecing together our various bits of collected knowledge to form a whole picture.
What do you see what do you see the benefits are with kind of this emphasis on group work? The benefits and the challenges from your perspective?
Well, I mean, I think that this is clear to be very crude. We know very well how much students get from a lecture, and it's scaringly close to zero. So if that's the case, why do we insist on a beaten formula that we know does not work? So I think that, of course, there are lectures in the program. Of course, we lecture, but we try to offer some interactivity plus. And by offering these scenarios that Eva is talking about, PBLs, problem-based learning cases, students have to work on them. It's your own time. There is where there is active learning. Active learning does not happen when you listen to someone talking. Active learning happens when you process information. That's why we feel like it's so important to combine, make a combination. And then problem-based learning is one way, seminars, but group work, asking the students to interact with each other. This is the kind of combination that we try to offer. We do have lectures. And we think it's important part of the program, but that's not the exclusive means of learning.
And so you're talking about this balance between different ways of learning. What is there an average day? I mean, are you on campus at like 8 in the morning and you leave at 5, or is there also kind of periods of self-study? How?
Again, it depends so much on which classes you pick. As you start looking at what classes are available, you're going to see that the schedules for them are very different. Some are more fast-paced and some are slower-paced, so that's going to impact it a lot. But in general, I was coming onto campus once things returned to campus most days, but I was only in a room with professors for maybe 3 hours or so, and a lot of the rest of it was either self-directed study, prepping for a PBL, or attending a group session, or working on our projects, or doing a literature review. And then we also had a component of lab work. So it's not really a 9 to 5, but I would say if you're doing a full course load, it's anywhere from 30 to 50 hours of work per week. And that depends very much on which courses you picked and how those two schedules are going to line up that week.
Yeah. And how, I mean, what have you found? I mean, how have you found the kind of, planning side? I mean, how do you make sure that you don't look at the schedule and go, oh yeah, there's like 4 hours scheduled. Hey, taking it easy now. But how do you make sure that you do those 30 to 50 hours?
It is very difficult. I will say that finding a schedule that works for you is more important than following a 9 to 5. So especially in the winter time, because it can be very dark at night. If you're not used to Sweden, and I'm from Florida, so I wasn't, it is more important for me to get out in the afternoon and then keep studying from like 3 until 8 at night. And that was fine because I got out during the day. So finding a schedule that works for you is the most important. But also, it's a good idea to have a set of priorities when you're sitting down in the morning. Like, okay, I have a lecture, I have a lab, there's a gap in between those, and I also have this assignment. It's not due for another week, but are you really going to want to work on it this weekend? So having that set of priorities and just knowing what's coming and keeping on top of it is huge, because especially with 2 concurrent courses, it can be very difficult to sort of time manage if you tunnel in and only focus on what's in front of you. It's very important to have that sort of global picture so that you can prioritize what needs your attention and your energy now.
And we do, but we have support for new students who arrive and they're not used to this. We have support in place for that, don't we? We do.
All right, if you say so. We are just, if you are listening to this, we are watching this basically, this is a master program. We do place high expectations on the students that come to this program. That means that you are going to be able to plan on your own, you're going to be able to study on your own, you are going to decide, you are going to be your own master.
Yes.
And I think, and I think that's fair. Of course there is help. Of course there is help, but we expect that with our help you will help yourself. This is supposed to be a challenge. This is a master program. I mean, to be taken into this program, you have already done your bachelor. You have already a bachelor in related subject, in biomedicine, biotechnology, medical bioscience, biology, biomedical analyst, whatever. So you have already studied a few years at the university. You already have a background. And we want to build on this. You are not new to studying at the university. You should not be new at trying to find answers to things you're curious about. That's where we want to place the level. And I think that our experience is that the students that come here have that level. Then, of course, they may be used to a different system. But I think that the help that the students get is they help each other. We basically recruit the students internationally. Everyone is here in the same boat. Everyone feels in the same situation. I think that there is a tremendous amount of helping each other, which goes a much longer way than if I have to actually be offered this help. Then, having said this, the university has student counselors that are there to help, advisors. In the program, we see to it that every single student, the day after you arrive and the program starts, you will have a mentor assigned to you. There's going to be a mentor you can ask. So of course there is help. We see to it that there is help, but we strongly believe that you should help yourself and that your student colleagues will also help. And I think that that's the winning model, basically. It's not depending on us only. It's not depending on you only. It's not depending on your fellow students only. It's basically the whole thing that helps in getting away with it.
Yeah. Can I just piggyback off of that? Because that is very true. There are resources available. Your mentor is a huge help for questions. The library has resources that are phenomenal, but you have to actually work up the nerve to go to the library and talk to someone. There are also mental health resources that are available. There are resources in place, but the ones that we keep coming back to as students is each other. So that first week, it is very important, especially if you're from somewhere that is not Linköping, you don't necessarily have that built-in social network, to start creating that network as soon as you get here. Start meeting people, start collecting people on Facebook or WhatsApp, because most of the international students will use WhatsApp. And start building that infrastructure so that you have someone you can go to when you're like, wait, where am I? All of the classrooms are named funny. I don't know where I'm going. What do I do? And that you can sort of, because those, even 2 years down the road, when I now know that the tree classrooms are all in the same place, I still have that group that I can message and be like, hey, does anyone have a good resource for this sort of data mining process? And someone in the group probably does.
That's a really good tip. And we also have, I mean, last year we did a speed dating event on Instagram, which was, not speed dating in terms of, finding a partner, but obviously finding your peers in your master's program. So join, if you're not following our Instagram account, do so. It's Linköping University, and we'll do something similar this summer. And it'll be a really good way of finding these people before you get here, to talk about things. I mean, like housing and you also said before, actually, talking about meeting people, how you arrived a bit early. I mean, you have to be here for the roll call. That's something that, we'll talk a bit about, the importance of the roll call. If you're not here for the roll call, you will lose your place. But it's quite nice arriving earlier.
I would say that if it is in any physical way possible for you to get here anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks ahead of the roll call, absolutely do that. Because first of all, the way the rent works here is that you're pretty much paying for the month anyways, so you may as well use your room. But other than that, finding your way around the city, being able to navigate the buses, knowing where the 2 campuses are, and because there are 2 campuses, which I did not realize till I got here. That was a fun learning curve. But being able to figure those things out in person and have that sort of already taken off your plate when you start your courses is huge, because then you're not worried about where do I buy food or like how do I do laundry. You have that figured out. Now you're like, okay, do I want to go ahead and buy Janeway's Immunobiology, or can I get a copy from the library? And really, when you're starting your classes, that's what you should be worried about, not how to feed yourself. You should have hopefully figured that out.
Well, I think...
Can I add something to this? Because, I mean, we have been working together with the Student Association. There is a big association of students at the medical faculty, and in previous years we have been arranging ourselves some sort of social activities for the beginning of the program. But this coming year, in August this year, is the first time that officially the student union or the student organization will take care of that. So we have seen to it that there is already some students from the year 1 that will continue as students next year, as year 2 students will be working as your how is it?
Your kind of buddies, or
Exactly.
kind of a
It's
buddy
a buddy
system.
system that will introduce you to the social life in Linköping. And of course, arriving, as Eva said, 1 or even 2 weeks earlier, you will benefit tremendously from that, because you will already start creating this social network. And there will be year 2 students that will be guiding you, particularly the week of the roll call and the week afterwards, into showing you around, showing you what you should know, the details that may make your life much simpler if you know them. You will learn them eventually, but I mean, you could learn them in an easy way with someone's help and just showing you.
I think it's really essential. I mean, I think this knowing somebody from the year above who's just kind of gone through what you've done, I think it's invaluable, really. It's really good.
I did that my first week. I found students who had been here in the bachelor's program, and I was like, okay, I'm never leaving your side. And that was hugely helpful.
Yeah. You're talking about being here early. I'm just going to mention we do have arrival days, which is when the international office is open between 11 and 8 in the evening. So you can go to them. You come here. There's also a free shuttle service from the local airport, so Linköping Airport, and from the train station to Campus Valla, where you go and meet the international office and do the necessary things. And then there's free transport to your accommodation afterwards. And these arrival days are 2nd of August, 15th and 16th of August, and 22nd and 23rd of August. So it's, have a look at these dates and try and time your arrival with these dates. But make sure you're here before the roll call. I keep repeating that. It's very, very important. I was just thinking, when to ask you, when you first get here, it's all you arrived during the pandemic, which is such a shame. But that first honeymoon when everything's like new and shiny and exciting, and then it's not so new and shiny and exciting. And you mentioned the dark and possibly the cold. What do you do?
Yeah, we actually had a whole, that was included in our welcome lecture, was that whole process of the honeymoon phase into the sort of, I have no idea what I'm doing, and then getting more comfortable and being like, okay, I've got this. But by that point, it's winter. So vitamin D. But other than that, it really does help a lot to have created those social connections by then. But should I focus more on the sort of how to deal with winter, or?
You can do both. I mean, studies, kind of how to focus with your studies, I suppose, when you feel that kind of, slump in energy levels, or, you just want to maybe stay at home under the duvet because it's quite nice.
It is quite nice, and it's warm, which is very important in winter
Exactly.
here. Didn't have to worry about that before. I will say having some kind of routine helps a lot, especially if this wasn't an option our first winter, which was very difficult to navigate. But setting study dates at the library, even if your friends aren't in the same subject, having like we're going to be at the library studying, Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 3. That kind of accountability with a group, even if you're in separate subjects, really does help a lot. And then you can, go out to lunch together beforehand or meet up afterwards and go somewhere. But just having some kind of external schedule, because keeping internally motivated when you are dealing with that sort of like the stress of everything becoming overwhelming and not knowing what you're doing and winter coming, that it can become a lot very quickly. So just stay self-aware and stay connected with not everybody in your group, but at least a couple of people you should try and check in with regularly.
No, that's good advice. Have you had students who have really struggled, and do you have any advice?
It does happen, but I don't think that's the exception rather than the rule, really. Of course, that depends, it's an individual thing, but I think I would remind everyone that, Linköping University is a big university. There are lots of international master programs, so finding foreign master students in town is not difficult. Although our program is the only English-speaking master program at the medical faculty. The technical faculty will have many. And it's not unusual that students basically already know someone or that get to know someone. So I think that in that sense, socialize, move out, and particularly take advantage of the months of August is too late because I mean you will be coming late in August, but the months of September and October when the weather is still all right and when it's still not too dark, make sure that you get to know people. And then when you do that, basically November will come. November is the toughest month, but by then you will have that social network that will keep you through. There's going to be tons of parties now that Corona is over, so of course there's going to be tons of parties. Students arrange parties all the time. Make sure you join the student union, for example. That's another thing that you can do. And these things will keep you socially busy outside of the actual study hours.
And also for accommodation, I don't know where you're staying, but a lot of our students end up in corridor rooms. So it's basically student housing, so you have it's literally a corridor with 8 rooms coming off it, and there's a communal kitchen and living room area, and then each room has its own kind of bed, study area, and its own bathroom. So, and I think a lot of people, you know, these 8 people, this, from what I've heard, they seem to have a lot of fun, but it's also people, you know, find really good friends. And it's a mix of international students, Swedish students, and different programs. So if you haven't signed up for housing yet, do so. Have a look at our accommodations page.
And I will just say, I've never stayed in corridor housing, but I have friends who have, and I've been over there fairly frequently. And one of the things is you're not just limited to the 8 people that you're living with, because those people are going to be friends by. So even if 2 of the people in your hall you don't necessarily get along with, you might get along with their friends. So it's just think of it as an entryway to an expanded network, because it really is like, our program can feel quite small sometimes because it is fairly small, but there are so many other programs going on, and you will see some of those faces in your classes. You will have classes in common with other programs. So don't be afraid to like, oh, they're not in my program, I can't talk to them. Like, no, go talk to them. Go grab a drink. Go hang out outside of class. Like, great, you have a new friend now.
That's really good advice. I want to ask Georgie, what do we expect of our students? I mean, you kind of talked a bit about it before, and they need to be proactive, and they need to be, you know, we're expecting adults to arrive who are motivated, but what else do we expect?
I think that, I mean, basically it's that interest, that burning interest for the life sciences. Our program has been for long a very research-oriented program. It still is, but we are now opening and trying to actually open up towards the industry, towards the pharmaceutical industry, towards the life science industry. Those are possibilities that will be increasing over the years. So we really think that if that's your area of interest, that just show that interest and then be curious, be inquisitive, ask, because what you should not expect is that no one is gonna basically serve you on a platter what you want. Ask, and then probably things will happen. So I think that we are all thrilled. We all that teach in the program, that are teachers in the program, just love to interact with students. This is one thing that many of you maybe are not used to, and that's we are very close by. The teachers in the program will not have, we have essentially a rather open door policy. You can always send an email to one of the teachers. You can always try to actually set a conversation. Teachers will be very open in discussing things. And I think that there is where you show your interest, you show what you want, and then we can make it happen. So I think that we have fantastic opportunities. And then it's just for you to come and question and grab these opportunities and use them. And that requires ambition, that requires interest, that requires that you have that extra spark. So, okay, I want to check this, I want to check that, I want to find this. It's not only about being academically interested, it's not only about being academically smart. It means also finding opportunities, grabbing those opportunities, and make sure that, well, you know, they are there for you to take. So that's the kind of student we want. We want students that are ambitious, that want to do things, that want to ask questions,
Curious.
that think a little bit outside of the box, because obviously that's what we think that is going to be the most, it's going to be the students and the program the most success.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah.
I will say, it's because this program is so open and so flexible. There are very few strict obligations, which if you're coming from a more rigid structure can be very confusing at first because you're like, no, I'm waiting to be told what to do. Stop waiting to be told what to do.
Yeah.
Because this program is so flexible, there are very few obligations and there are so many opportunities. If you want to take a class in tumor biology, even if you don't think you're going to end up in cancer research, but it's fascinating to you, take that class. If you want to sign up for a class that's outside of LIU, because it's in an area that's of interest and it applies to the master's program, you can also do that. There are so many opportunities to explore new areas of interest and find fields that may apply to your future that you may not know exist yet. I didn't know trained immunity was a thing. Now I'm majoring in it. So just keep exploring those opportunities because you really don't know what's out there. And it's so incredible to just open up a window and find there's a brand new world beyond that.
I quite like that. It's a brand new world out there.
Well, I mean, it's nothing. Notice what has happened during the corona pandemic, right? I mean, all of a sudden, things that we did not know were there are there and are needed. So this year, for example, we have every year we organize what's called the Life Science Day. And we organize it together with the bachelor program in biomedicine. So it's basically the 3-year bachelor and the 2-year master. We organize this last Life Science Day as a day that we bring people from the industry, we bring people from academia to talk about their life experiences, why they choose the path they chose, try to give some sort of role model experiences and focusing on one aspect. Of course, this year we had to focus on Corona, and we brought people from the Folkhälsomyndigheten, the Swedish Epidemiological Institute, or so that reflected on what has their work been, and all of a sudden. What we were told, we had recruiting partners from some of the big pharma. AstraZeneca, who originally, at least part of it, was a Swedish company, but also from Pfizer, of course. So we had recruiting partners from these companies, and they say, well, never ever have we had so much need as now, as these last 2 years, in recruiting people with a life sciences background, with a medical biology background. And that's because there was a need and there was money to it, and that was recruited. And who knows what new knowledge these people needed. It's probably not the old knowledge. It's more like what is happening now, what we need to work on. That's what's important, and I think that's what has to be considered. Life sciences, medical biosciences is an expanding area, and well, we figure out some things, and at the same time we get new questions all the time. So we need people that can tackle these questions.
That's what science is.
I think this is good. I mean, you know, I'm glad that you're both kind of on the same page as what's expected. Mm-hmm. And is it difficult to meet these expectations?
At times, yes, especially if you're coming from outside of Sweden. But it's when you do take that initiative to set up systems for yourself and create an infrastructure, that makes it so much infinitely easier. But I will say that if you don't take that initiative, it can be incredibly difficult at times. So it's important when things are going great to set up systems for when things aren't. You don't plan for the days when you're most productive. You plan for the days when you're least productive so that you have a system in place for when things are challenging. Also, please believe your teachers when they tell you that an advanced course is incredibly difficult, because it is.
That sounds like you've wise from experience there.
Yeah.
We're going to move over to questions. I just have a few things that I'd like to kind of go over before we move on to the questions. I mentioned the arrival days. We also have a welcome to LIU session. This year it's in 2 parts. So the first part is digital. So you find that by going to liu.sc/admitted, and you'll find that there's a link to welcome to LIU. So you'll find lots of links, lots of useful information. But then there's also a live session, which will be on the 18th of August, between 1 and 4. And there's also another session on the 25th of August, between 1 and 4. So you can choose from two. The first one is together with the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, and the second one is together with the Faculty of Science and Engineering. So these are useful sessions. Yours would have been digital, wouldn't they? Yeah. You can go to this one now and see what it's like.
Meet all the newbies.
Exactly.
You can ask me what it's like in the lab.
Yeah.
It's fun. We play with science.
That's why you chose this program, because you get to play with science. Also, have a look, as I mentioned before, Instagram. It would be really, follow, find the matchmaking, but also ask questions. We have students who take a week each to show you their lives and share their daily lives, basically. We also have a blog called International Program Students at LIU. Yeah, we chose a long one. But we do have the blog, and that's again students writing about their experience. And it's a lot of these things that, you talked about, and, when the honeymoon's over, how do you deal with that? Housing, you can see, what the housing looks like and so on. There's also a podcast called Fika with Us. You'll find that on our web pages. And that's, again, students talking about various topics. And a lot of them are, it is things like finding a job, careers-wise, or part-time work now, which is difficult to find, but it's kind of various topics. And then we do have the admitted page with lots and lots and lots of information. Right, let's see, and also asking us a question. The quickest way of asking us a question is you either go to our Facebook page and you send us a question there, or you answer to an email that you've already received. So invite for this webinar, for example, you just answer that one with your question. Let's see what we have. We have a question. What should I do when I first arrive in Linköping?
Well, the very first thing is probably figure out where you're living, because I assume you've arranged housing, so figure out where that is. But also, just before you arrive, while you're rolling in on the train, download 3 apps. Uchtdependen, the LIU app, and WhatsApp. You're welcome.
Thank you. Should I do any preparatory reading before starting? Do you advise? I mean, should the newly admitted, should I spend all summer reading up on?
No. Enjoy your summer. Come fully loaded. Yes. We'll give you enough to do. Don't worry about it.
Enjoy the last months of freedom.
No, don't put it this way. It's not freedom, but I mean, I think that prioritize things. I mean, enjoy your vacation and then come here fully. You could read lots of things, and it's never gonna hurt that you read all these things. Of course not. But I mean, don't stress about it, because that's not what it is about. You will get all the material you need to learn and discuss when you get here. All the preparation that you do is welcome and received, but don't stress ahead of time. There's no need for it.
Yeah, you will have time to read when you are here. You will have a more guided idea of where to look and what you should be reading when you're here, and you can interact with professors. And it's going to be a lot harder to hug your family and loved ones when you're away. So do that while you still can, okay?
Exactly. Have a cuddle party all summer. Yeah. So these the readings that you do. I mean, do you get everything in the library, or have you had to buy a lot of books?
I haven't bought a single book. But I do know some people who have. There are certain books that are good to have in your library if it's an area that you're interested in, basics in the field, that sort of thing. But the vast majority of them are available in the library, and quite frankly, because a lot of the time what we're learning is at the edge of science. A lot of the material that we have may not necessarily be in one book. It's not neatly contained. A lot of what we're reading is research papers that were published last month, or articles and literature reviews that have been put together over the past couple of years that may not have made it into a textbook yet. So a lot of the reading that you're going to do is going to be available online, and it's probably going to be more articles than you would think.
Mm-hmm. And we have access to a lot of journals and publications.
Yeah, the library. As a university student, you will have access to the library, all the resources that the library provides, and that includes, interestingly, lots of electronic books as well. So many textbooks are found in the form of an electronic book. That means that you can consult it without having a physical copy of the book. Subscription to journals will be available. So, I mean, that is, and even software. I mean, don't forget that. I mean, sometimes, particularly for foreign students, they are not used to that. The university signs up for campus licenses for some of the mainstream programs that you will be using, and you will have access to those programs when you get here, and you will be able to install those programs in your own computer. The university will not provide a computer for you, that we cannot do, but the software is available free of charge for all the students that are registered in our programs.
Do the students need a computer?
Yes.
Is it essential
Oh, yeah,
to have a
yeah,
computer?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need a top-of-the-line,
No.
universe gaming laptop or anything like that, but you should have a reliable workhorse, something that can handle decent internet connection, and also something that, if you drop it, will probably be fine.
Get a Mac then. No.
No, don't do that.
No.
Don't do
No,
that.
but you will need a word processor. We need to be able to write text for assignments. You will need a PowerPoint or any presentation type of program. You will need a calculation program, Excel or similar. There are plenty of options. Nowadays, of course, Google offers all these things that are online. They probably work well. I don't use them. But you need a computer because, I mean, a lot of the things that are happening will be computer-based. We also have a study platform that's called Elisam, where all the study materials are placed. So you will need to have access to those materials. And so computer is fundamental, I'd say.
When you take a course, it is always a good idea to sort of poke around on LISAM like the day that it starts, even if the lectures haven't started yet. As soon as you have access, just poke around so that, because it's nice to know where all of the files are going to be instead of going, where's the PowerPoint for lesson 3? It's like, oh, I know where that is. So just take your time to explore LISAM and figure out where those resources are so that you're not frantically searching for them later.
Good advice. We have another question. Is it easy to find part-time work? I think I'm going to start by saying no. No. And as you said, the program, I mean, you were talking about 30 to 50 hours. It doesn't really, it's a full-time job, really, to be a student. And you're expected to be proactive and you're supposed to, do a lot of work and prepare for classes and lectures. So even if you were to find something, it is often very difficult to combine with your studies. And also because I think you have to be flexible because, depending on, you have different courses. So if you have a job that requires you to work, every evening between 5 and 7, you might not be able to meet that obligation because the courses, something's happening or you have a deadline. So it's not recommended and it's difficult to find, and especially if you don't speak Swedish.
I will say I do know students that have managed to do it successfully. Those that have managed to do it successfully have found jobs where they are working on average 10 hours or less a week and they have flexible schedules. There are options for that. Those are mostly online jobs, and some friends I have had have worked at LIU, and those types of situations generally tend to be easier because if you tell someone on campus that you can't work Tuesday because you have an exam, they're not going to give you a hard time about it.
No.
They're just going to tell you to find someone to cover your shift. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be incredibly, remember, like I said, that workload can vary depending on how your courses overlap and where your exams are. So even at 10 hours a week, if you're doing one of those 50-hour weeks academically, trying to add 10 hours a week of work on top of that is a lot. So
I think students who have tried to combine have really struggled.
yeah.
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 There is a danger, of course, that you will extend your 2 years into 2.5 or 3 because of that. And then I don't know if it's worthwhile paying that price.
Yeah, which, I mean, if you have to for financial reasons, you can do that. The program can be extended, but if you do not absolutely need to work for like financial necessity, if you can't for some reason find any grant in the world that wants to give you some money, which there are a lot of grants, go ahead and ask at LIU. There are resources on LISAM for that. If you can't for some reason find it and you have to get work, just be very careful because it is incredibly difficult to balance.
Also, be aware of, if you're a fee-paying student, that you have to have kind of passed a certain number of credits in one semester, or the migration agency will come sniffing around.
If you say you're going to be a full-time student and then you're not,
Yeah.
they get a little touchy about that.
Yeah. And it's, again, you need to extend the residence permit after your first year. And then if you then need to extend it after the second year, it becomes difficult again. So there's lots of other problems. So do what Eva suggested from the beginning, plan. Make sure you plan, make sure you start straight away, get into it immediately, really, and make friends and ask questions.
Yeah, build your support infrastructure from day one. Even before the group days, even before roll call days, there are multiple Facebook groups, there are social groups. You can reach out to former students. There are a lot of us that have been going here for a while that you can just ask questions of if you are curious or want more answers, and you can email professors. But yeah, start building that infrastructure now.
Thanks. Another question, which I struggle a bit to understand, is how frequently do I need to travel?
You don't need to travel at all.
No, it's all campus based. So you come here, August, when the program starts, and then you stay in Linköping for 2 years.
They could mean how often do I need to travel to campus, in which case I would say that you're probably going to be here 3 to 5 days a week for at least a small amount of time. Some things are still online, some larger lectures are still on Zoom.
But not in our program. Our program is small, so pretty much everything is campus-based.
Everything's back?
Yeah.
Nice.
And all the courses have lab exercises that will require your presence on campus. So unless something happens, we are back to normal, and then all the teaching will be on campus, either one of the two campuses, the campus of the Faculty of the Engineering or Science and Engineering, or the medical faculty. But and there is no much of a travel. Your best tool is a bicycle. Actually, bicycle will take you. It's a 10-minute ride between both campuses in Linköping, 20 minutes by walking. You can also take a bus, but I think that's all the travel you will need to do, at least in the first year.
Yeah, there is a LIU bus between the campuses. There is a city bus that goes around. That's that app that I recommended before. But yes, a bicycle is your best friend in this city. You can also get them at secondhand shops. So take a look in the secondhand shops before they all get snapped up.
Yes. There's lots of secondhand shops. So again, and keep an eye on various Facebook groups, because a lot of students who leave
will sell their
stuff
to the next incoming batch of students.
So it's a good place to look. We have another question. Do students get to choose their tutorial groups?
Not normally, no. No. The best tutorial groups I had was the one that was set up where, because typically you're taking 2 classes concurrently, so they'll normally choose what group you're in, and the best one I was in was where they chose what tutorial group you were in based on your other class. Because if everyone in your group is taking the same 2 classes, you have the same schedule, which means that there's none of this, I'm not available Thursday, I'm not available Friday, and then it's 2 weeks on and you haven't met yet. But no, generally you don't choose your tutorial group.
Thanks. Is it feasible to take a Swedish language course during the semester?
Yes, do it.
So where are you? Where's you're doing your course? Because we do have there is a Swedish language course that the university offers.
Yeah, I'm in it.
You're in that one, and that one is limited number of places. And if you're a fee-paying student, it will incur an extra fee. So it's not free for fee-paying students, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
unfortunately, yeah, which is a shame. But you're in it.
I am. I'm in Swedish A2, which is the second one. The first one is Swedish A1. I strongly recommend going ahead and taking that class, even with the workload, because that course is very spread out. So it is very manageable and very flexible. You get your textbook, you work at your own pace, and you meet via Zoom once every 3 weeks. And you sort of work on the material independently in between. And that is very useful for being able, because Duolingo can only get you so far. That course is very useful for understanding why, when you're asking a question, the words switch order, or why people are looking at you funny because you've been talking in the past tense the entire time, because it's just very helpful to get around.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can say that the experience does not go along Eva's suggestion. Basically, very few students finish that course. There's quite a few that register for it, very few finish it. I'm not saying that you should not do it. That's actually the experience that we see.
Yeah, well, because a lot of people will start taking the course, realize how heavy the course load is, and then the other thing is realize that maybe they're not going to be in Sweden after they graduate, so they sort of be like, well, I'll focus on my courses. But
And
if
they
you're
realize probably how, how far you actually get with just English.
Yeah, it's
just
very
campus,
frustrating to be like, I'm going to learn a language, but everyone's still speaking English. But I will say, if you're planning on being here beyond graduation, I would absolutely recommend it.
Yeah, and there's also SFI, which is kind of the council-run Swedish course, so Swedish for Immigrants, I think it's called. So there are other options as well, but you don't need it. You don't need it. Is there any research in salmonella or any bacteria genomics at LIU?
Yeah, but I don't know who.
Not directly on microbial genomics. Well, there are some groups but work more like microbial genomics and an ecological context, perhaps. Then there is one group that works with salmonella and makes therapeutical ways to treat that. But not directly in what you're saying, but I mean, perhaps you could find some satellite topics. The best way to address that is to go to the LIU webpage and basically look into the medical faculty and see the different areas of research and see what's available on that. Mm-hmm.
And I will add to that, another great way to find groups and find areas of interest is go ahead and go to PubMed and find some papers in a field that you're interested in, and you can restrict the search to authors that are in Linköping, which is a great way to be like, this paper was published and this professor is here. So even if they don't have active research now, you can reach out to them and get the ball rolling.
So again, be active.
Yes.
Yeah.
Proactive.
Somebody is asking about, should we have contact or email of admitted students so they can stay in touch and discuss practical aspects? From what I understood, they will be contacted by the second year students. So you'll have the buddy program. Yep. So you will have a contact where you can find each other, and also our Instagram account with the speed dating. We need to call it something else.
Yeah, you need to change that now.
I think so too.
There are also Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Some for this program, some for international students. There's about 100 Facebook groups. Just pick one.
Yeah. So we won't be sharing any emails or information. There's lots of kind of laws against being able to do that. So this is kind of how we're going to end up doing it.
They can message me on Instagram if they want to.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Nerdy Nanny. I used to write children's books. I promise it makes sense. If you have follow-up questions, though, you can reach me there.
Interesting kind of switch from children's books to experimental and medical. Yeah.
I was a baker for 10 years in between, too.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating.
I can hold a pipette very steady.
Can we do an exchange semester abroad?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that in the program we have 2 double degree exchanges with 2 universities in Austria. And a double degree works in a way that you take 1 year in one university, in Linköping, and usually the second year at the partner university. This year we have 6 students in Austria doing their second year double degree. Next year we are sending 2 students, so I mean there is always room. And now we are actually discussing and signing up for a new double degree with a university in Switzerland. So it's our intention to actually keep expanding that possibility, and there is, but you asked about 1 semester. Usually a double degree requires both semesters, so a full year. You still can actually do 1 semester because essentially the freedom that Eva was referring to earlier applies also to your research project. So when it's the time to do your research project, you are not limited to Linköping. You can look for research groups in other universities in Sweden. We have students in Lund and at Karolinska at the moment, for example, or in Europe or everywhere else. I mean, at the moment, there is a student actually doing her research project in Barcelona in Spain. So during your research project, you can actually choose a research group that accepts you. And that can be in Linköping, in Sweden, in Denmark, or in Europe, or even in the United States, or essentially wherever. It's that you are going to be doing your project. So the flexibility is there, the possibilities are there.
And you've chosen to do your project here.
I have, yeah. I got really lucky when I was finding my first project, stumbled into a room and said, I think epigenetics are cool. And my PI was like, cool, I'm kidnapping you. And I've been working with the same group ever since, but that is uncommon. A lot of students do try different areas. I just got lucky in that I found something that I love sort of in the first couple of months of being here.
And that's also, again, this kind of independence and proactiveness. Students have to find their own.
You do. You have to find your own research group and your own project.
Mentors will facilitate,
Yeah.
but it's the students themselves that basically make contacts, ask around, check. The person that was asking earlier about salmonella, that's just great. Basically, you check it out if that's your area of interest. Check out, Eva had a suggestion on how. Is there someone that's working on this in Linköping? You can ask your mentor, maybe not in Linköping, but maybe another Swedish university that you could actually move to you do your research project for a few months. And so you define that, and your mentor will facilitate that, but it's up to you really to make that step.
Yeah. They're a great guide for sort of if they have any clues as to who's working on what, they might be able to give you a name and that person may know somebody else. But it really is like find publications, find research facilities. There's also Medivy Science Park right next to Linköping. There are 200 companies in that park that are doing, I don't know how many of them are research based, but there are a lot of organizations going on in there.
This is an area that we are trying to tap into now and just basically try to get a better connection with them. We have a connection with some of the biosciences companies in town, but that's something that we are working more actively in the coming years actually.
Well, and there are LIU PhD students who are now working there.
Oh,
so
yeah, definitely.
check them out on LinkedIn. That's also a great resource, just for the record. LinkedIn is phenomenal.
Thanks. We're coming up to the end of our hour. Last question. How many students are there on the program? So kind of on average, how many are admitted or how many actually start?
We are aiming for an admission of 30 students per year. At the moment, we are close to 55, something like this. Those are the number of students in the program. That's because it's 2 years. So around, then 55, and then including some double degree students. That's the size of the program. So this is a relatively small program, 30 students per year. That's what we think that we can cater for, up to 35, and then the admission will depend. We are happy with that. We are not ambitious in making a gigantic program that we cannot really help through. So we invest a great deal of time and human resources into our mentor program, for example. And of course, basically every mentor at the moment has about 12 students, something like this. We think that that's a good number. If we start taking more students, we either take new mentors or we have to make larger groups. That's something we don't want.
And they need access to the labs. I mean, if it's hands-on, I suppose you can't have too many.
I think that lab capacity we would manage with teaching labs, but perhaps it would start being a little bit more cumbersome finding research groups that can cater for so many, because it's not only the master students. We have a bachelor program that also has quite a few students that they need to do their projects. Our medical, biomedical analyst programs also do research projects. So at the end, it becomes a little bit. So we think that this is an ideal size, 30 to 35.
Yeah, we can't just unleash 1,000 students upon the scientific community and find projects for all of them. But
no, that would be irresponsible, because we know that then we would not have the capacity to actually provide sensible research projects for all the students.
But I'll just mention that just because our program is small doesn't mean that your classes are necessarily going to be small, because there is overlap with other courses. So even if there's 30 people in your year, your courses, you're going to have a lot of overlap with the medical schools and the technical colleges and other people who just got curious. And so there is going to be a broader community. It's not like you're going to see the same 30 people in every class for the next 2 years.
No, because there's also common courses for first and second year students. So basically there's a degree of overlap. Other than the first 2 obligatory courses. And the first 2 obligatory courses will happen if you arrive in August, September, and October. You have the 2 obligatory courses for the first year master students. All the other courses after that are shared between first and second year students. So you will be going to courses with second year students already in November after starting the program.
Okay. We're gonna one last question. If I choose to do my PhD in Linköping, will I get a space?
How good are you?
It's not your choice, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So if you want to do your PhD, you'll look for opportunities. And I mean, usually what we see is, there we don't have statistics, but we see that quite a few students will do a research project, and then they show their value, their PI of the lab is interested, and sometimes it starts with a technician position or with a laboratory assistant position, and sometimes it starts directly as a PhD, sometimes it develops into something, so show your value, and many times it's a possibility. But this is important, in Sweden you don't choose to be a PhD student. You cannot.
Hired.
You get hired to be a PhD student, and the day you start as a PhD student, you have a contract and you have a salary. But you don't have the possibility of saying, I want to start my PhD. That does not work like this. To be admitted as a PhD, you have to have a salary and you have to have a group that is supporting you.
Yeah, it's closer to applying for a job than it is to applying for a spot in a college. It's not like there's a pre-existing number of positions. So you find a group that you like and show your value to that group. But I will also say that even if there isn't funding right now, if you have a PI who likes you and your work is doing well, don't be afraid of those temporary positions like Jordi was saying. Like, spend a year as a technician, spend a year working in an adjacent field. And if you have a PI that is invested in you and a project that is going somewhere, they will find someone. Oh,
Principal investigator.
yeah, sorry.
Principal, it's not private investigator.
It's
No.
a principal
Principal
investigator.
Principal investigator, your research supervisor, head of the lab, the grand poobah.
Okay. I'm with you. Thank you. Sorry I interrupted.
No, but sorry,
I was just like, PI. I was like,
what's a PI? That's right. That's right.
And then it just became a normal word.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, well, the university world is full of those.
There's a lot of jargon, and if we're throwing around words that are unfamiliar to you, do not be afraid to ask, because I was convinced that my job position was a made-up word. It's called amanuense. That word doesn't exist in English.
No.
At all.
Most Swedish people don't know what that means either, so don't worry. Anyway, I'd like to say thank you for joining us and for your questions, and I hope this has been useful. Get in touch with us. Instagram, blog, podcast, Facebook.
LinkedIn, if you want,
LinkedIn.
if you have access.
Yeah. So there's lots of ways of kind of making sure you feel comfortable, confident before you arrive here in August. And do not forget the roll call. Don't come too late, because you will no longer have a place. So it's really, really, really important. Thank you, Eva and Jordi.
Thank you very
This has been
much.
a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.